Alright, prepare yourself, because this video has no nostalgia whatsoever, so there will be no bias, in my opinion. Okay, so I'm a 2000s baby who grew up in the UK, and I've always loved DC animated TV shows. The first one I ever watched was actually The Legion of Superheroes, and as I grew up, I continued my love of DC cartoons by watching whatever else they would release, and they were for the most part fantastic. But this quarantine period has made me realise one thing. I am a DC animation fan without even watching the cartoon that changed the face of animated shows, Batman, the animated series. Its distinctive style of animation, as well as far more mature tone and writing, led to it being critically acclaimed and dubbed by IGN as the second greatest animated series of all time. Just slightly behind The Simpsons, but I mean, who can beat The Simpsons? Now, since I was born in the 2000s, I never got to see it on TV as a kid, and while I may have missed out back then, binging all 85 episodes of it over the last 2 weeks has been very enjoyable and a great way to pass the time this quarantine. So this video is going to give my honest thoughts on this show without any nostalgia lens placed over it. So with the trivialities now out of the way, let us begin and kickstart this new series on my channel. I will be dubbing it Cartoon Review with episode 1, Batman the Animated Series. Now, we all know the origin story that formed Batman. Bruce Wayne is the child of billionaire parents Thomas and Martha Wayne, who were shot dead one night in an alleyway by a common street thug. Enveloped by rage, young Bruce sets out on a journey to master mental and physical conditioning, martial arts, criminology, sciences, escape artistry, manhunting, forensics, detective work, interrogation methods, and intimidation, which he uses alongside his vast wealth of knowledge to come up with amazing gadgets to aid him on his nighttime escapades against the criminal scum of Gotham City as the incarnate of vengeance and Dark Knight, Batman. Now, Batman the Animated Series isn't Batman's first outing in animation by any means. Until this show aired, he'd featured in shows like The Adventures of Batman, Super Friends, The New Adventures of Batman, Super Friends, The Legendary Superpowers Show, and various others. But while those shows tended to be a bit more wacky and lighthearted, Batman the Animated Series changed the game with a much darker approach for a much more noir Batman story, with art style and animation that were astonishingly ahead of its time. In fact, most backgrounds were drawn on black paper to give that much more of a noir aesthetic to the show. Spanning a total of 85 TV episodes across 2 or 4 seasons depending on how you're watching it, and 2 feature-length movies, Batman the Animated Series first aired on September the 5th, 1992, completely blowing away kids of the time period. The series became a cornerstone of the Warner Bros. Animation department, helping it become one of the top producers of TV animation. For years, WBA had only been recognised for things like Looney Tunes and offshoots such as Tiny Toon Adventures, so this was their first attempt at doing a serious animated cartoon, which ended up exceeding all expectations. In 1994, the series was retitled to The Adventures of Batman and Robin, as it now featured Robin more prominently, trying to make the show more appealing to kids. Despite the new title and extra focus on Robin, the tone and writing of the series was not adversely affected because producer Bruce Timm was not interested in making a kids show, which personally I was glad to see. After the series was done, the producers of the show shifted their efforts and started working on Superman the Animated Series with a different approach regarding art style and animation. The success of that show convinced the network executives that Batman should be brought back under the same production and art style, and 3 years later, the new Batman Adventures was produced as a continuation. These shows, along with Batman Beyond, Justice League, and Justice League Unlimited, form what is now commonly referred to as the DC Animated Universe, and Batman the Animated Series is well recognized as the show that started it all. So technically, DC did the whole shared universe thing first, just on TV, so take that, Marvel. The original show also had 2 feature films, Batman Mask of the Phantasm, as well as Batman Mr. Freeze Sub-Zero, but I'm gonna save talking about those for another video, and before we get into the characters and final thoughts on the show, I'm gonna give a moment to this video's sponsor. Have you guys ever wanted some wavy looking anime t-shirts, hoodies, or accessories? Well, the lads over at Kaioken Clothing will hook you up with the very best quality anime based streetwear. Check out the store in the description and use the code TELBY for 10% off your entire order and become a true fan of your favorite anime. Now, I'm going to start with the direction they went with the Bruce Wayne character. Normally, Bruce plays up his image as a self-absorbed billionaire playboy, so basically, he's Tony Stark, all in an effort to hide his Batman persona. In this show, however, he's assertive and outwardly intelligent. He's not at all afraid of allowing Bruce Wayne to be seen as a good person, but makes sure to not let slip that he's Batman by choosing to hold back in dire situations. The only personality trait that Bruce actually fakes in this show is occasional clumsiness to distinguish himself that much more from the Bat. Now, when people think of Batman, none redefine the role like Kevin Conroy, who actually used a soft and deep voice to distinguish between Bruce Wayne and Batman. Now, in the show, it was never actually explained why Bruce chose bats to be his symbol of vigilantism, but in the movie Batman Mask of the Phantasm, he actually has several flashbacks to when Bruce actually starts out as a crime-fighting vigilante. It shows that to keep his identity a secret, he would fight in a balaclava. However, his problem with it was that criminals weren't actually afraid of him. He then gets into a relationship with a girl called Andrea, who makes him feel like giving up his life of crime fighting because he can't do it when there's someone at home waiting for him to come back. Later on, when Bruce proposes to her, they get scared by a colony of bats that fly out from a cave in the ground. It's while Bruce is inspecting the cave that would soon to be the Batcave that Alfred brings to him back the ring with a letter telling him that Andrea has to leave and that he should forget about her. This was the moment when Bruce Wayne died and finally gives up his life to the shadows, donning the cape and cowl for the first time under the symbol that once brought great fear to him and his first true love. I will not lie, I actually cried when I watched Bruce slowly put the mask on because the entire scene just pulled on my heartstrings. Now, Batman may be considered a bit of a loner, but he has his fair share of allies. Some personal favourites from the show include Jim Gordon, Al Cooper and Leslie Tompkins, but of course, none will be more notable than Barbara Gordon, Dick Grayson and the god tier best buddy Alfred Pennyworth. Initially, Barbara was just a character who would show up every so often to notice and tell Batman when her dad gets into trouble, but she donned the Batgirl suit in Shadow of the Bat Part 1, and even though she only appeared twice, she grew pretty well as a newcomer to the crime fighting business. Now, Robin actually came out of nowhere because when you follow the air date order of episodes, he never had any backstory given before he appears in the show, and instead, his actual backstory was given to us in the two-part Robin's Reckoning, which was actually critically acclaimed. It especially helped because he was neither goofy or gritty, but was made to be a normal, smart and well put together teenager, but was given the chance to get serious when needed, like in the aforementioned Robin's Reckoning episodes. Now, we all love Alfred, but what we love about him the most is his unwavering loyalty to Bruce, because, come on, I think everyone wants a person in their life as loyal as Alfred, and thankfully for Bruce, his parents made a great choice when they hired him, because Alfred basically raised Bruce after his parents died, instead of letting greed make him take advantage of the orphaned Bruce to somehow steal the company for himself. Honestly, some of the scenes between those two, it's just heartwarming. A bunch of new characters were also introduced initially exclusive to the show. Some new allies like former actor Simon Trent, who played the Grey Ghost in one of Bruce Wayne's childhood TV shows, and Officer Renee Montoya, who would later become the superhero The Question in the comics. New villains like Red Claw, Tigress, Baby Doll and the Sewer King were also invented with the series, but to limited interest and so never appeared outside of the show or its sequel. However, no new character would ever be as popular as the Joker's sidekick, Harley Quinn, who quickly became so popular that DC Comics added her to the mainstream Batman comic continuity and has since made herself an important part of cosplays everywhere. Thank you. Other villains like Lockup and the ninja named Kyodai Ken also received enough popularity to become characters in the comics, but they were never anywhere near as prevalent as Harley. Now, the series also made several reimaginings of old characters that were carried over into the comics as well. What made them so popular was they didn't just become a villain for the sake of villainy, but instead certain situations led them down this path, allowing the viewer to empathize with them a lot more. But also, it backed up the theme consistent in all of Batman. All it takes is one bad day to ruin a life. Mr. Freeze is a prime example. He was turned from a cliched mad scientist with a cold gimmick to a tragic figure whose actions, good or evil, are motivated by a desire to find a cure for his wife. The success of which actually compelled DC to bring the character back after killing him off some years earlier. Clayface also became far more compelling thanks to his tragic past. The series was also the first to give a logical reason for why Two-Face has his internal struggle, with the idea that Harvey Dent had a pre-existing dual personality before becoming Two-Face, and his double-sided black and white suit has become a common appearance for the character in the comics since. The series also gave new life to lesser known villains like the Clock King, Count Vertigo, and the Mirror Man. The Clock King especially, who actually got multiple episodes due to him becoming so much more interesting. Most other antagonists that appeared in the series stayed mostly the same to their comic counterpart like Poison Ivy, Catwoman, the Riddler, Mad Hatter, Ra's al Ghul, etc. Now let's talk about the Joker. The criminally insane clown prince of crime does not need any introduction, and in this universe, the Joker and Batman had already interacted before they would become their counterparts. This was explored more in the Batman Mask of the Phantasm movie. As the tails to Batman's heads, the character of Joker needed to be handled with the utmost care, and no one killed the role like Mark Hamill, who cemented himself as the definitive voice of the Joker, especially when he found the laugh. Overall, this series will be getting a score of 9 out of 10. Now before you tell me that it deserves a 10 minimum, let me explain myself. I was genuinely entertained by every episode I watched. The score was excellent, and I'm not gonna par the animation because for the time it came out, it was amazing. I only have 2 issues with it. The first is the air date order because it just ruined a lot of the 2-part episodes for me. Some of which, they would have been my favourites if it hadn't been for the gaps in between. And the second is the fact that Batman always seems to never be wrong. Obviously he's the hero of the show, but for example in Robin's Reckoning, I genuinely believe that Batman was in the wrong for keeping Robin out of the loop. However, the end of the episode made Robin out to be the person in the wrong, even though he fully had the right to be part of the mission, and Bruce not telling him about it just would have made him angrier, which it did. Other than those 2 minor gripes though, and the occasional meh episode, the series was honestly amazing because of its mature tone, well-written stories, and quality character development, on top of it being so different from other shows at the time. It felt far less episodic because the events of previous episodes did come to play in future events, an idea that is the foundation of a shared universe. Now I was planning to do an in-depth look at a certain episode that really stuck out to me, but as I was writing this section, the script got so long that I realised it could be a whole other video, so stay tuned for that. And thus concludes episode 1 of Cartoon Review. I think this was the perfect show to kick things off, so be sure to suggest other cartoons for me to review in the comments. And remember, if you don't want some wavy looking anime t-shirts, hoodies, or accessories, be sure to check out Kaioken clothing in the link below, using the code SELBY for 10% off. And be sure to follow my Instagram, @SirTCBibs, for daily Dragon Ball memes, updates, and if you want to talk to me, go right ahead. So once again, I appreciate you man taking your time to watch this video. Leave a like, subscribe, and bless.